Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mark and Smark Connection podcast. I am your host, the Smark Jesse Disbro, and with me is the Mark Matt Cooper.
Hello, everybody.
We're all revved up and ready to go because there was a small revolution this weekend, and we took part in it. It was not televised. It was on pay-per-view through the internet, though. So we have our normal show ahead of us. We've got the Marking Out segment. We've got the Smarks Remarks segment. We've got some meaty topics to dive into here. And then we're going to close it all up with the hot tag, hot take, and the finisher, sending you out with some hot takes, I guess. What do you got for us, Matt?
Well, let's get to the first segment of the show, which is called Marking Out. This is where I choose one thing that happened in the entire past week of wrestling, and I mark out about it. And part of the reason we're coming to you on a Sunday today, or we're recording on a Sunday, is because Jesse and I both tuned in to AEW Revolution, the pay-per-view that you could only really watch on the internet. It was actually the first legit pay-per-view, like pay-per-view prices and everything, that I watched. And I gotta say, I had a great time. It was a fantastic little show. Well, I don't want to call it little, but it had a certain genuineness to it and a lack of pretension that I haven't seen in the WWE for a while.
Right.
And it was a little bit more rough around the edges. The camera work and the video packages and a lot of that stuff was not quite as slick as the production machine that the WWE is. But I had a fantastic time. I thought it was great. There wasn't a match that I didn't enjoy.
It was a lot of fun. This is the first time that I've seen a full AEW pay-per-view. I watched the buy-in a couple of times, just here and there. But I was interested. It wasn't a huge stadium full of people like a WrestleMania or something. It was actually probably closer to what WWE draws for a Raw or a SmackDown. But that kind of thing makes it a little bit more intimate, so you get some trade-offs there.
Yeah, because in the days of yore, whenever I first started watching wrestling, the WWE rarely had events and stadiums that large. I mean, even the SummerSlams and things like that were still in, like Madison Square Garden or whatever. They weren't giant places.
And now they can't do Madison Square Garden anymore because it's just not big enough for the big events.
Yeah, so it was nice to see the intimate setting. I liked the wristbands that everybody had in the audience. Evidently, NXT TakeOver has done that a time or two. But I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
I liked the fact that the ramp went directly into the ring.
Yeah, that's something that AEW does. It's cool to kind of set yourself apart. So everybody's got a slightly different, ring. I think Impact went back to the regular four-sided ring, but they the innovators of that six-sided ring.
Oh, I hated that six-sided ring. I wouldn't watch Impact just because I hated that six-sided ring so much. I was like, what is this shit? Octagon?
NWA is the studio show, so they're literally like one side of the ring is the studio setup, one side is the news desk, the other side has some bleachers up against the wall, and the band would be in the other corner if they had one. So they all have some interesting, they all have interesting looks to them, and this is a good way to kind of keep yourself different. But we'll talk a little bit more about differences with the AEW show, having us watch it for the first time, and what it's different, versus the WWE, and especially against the quote unquote pay-per-view that WWE had this week, which I watched some of. I know Matt didn't because he was working or something like that.
Well, also I consider those shows to be non-canon. However,
we'll get to that point later. Hold your ire. I'm not even gonna worry about SmackDown because basically all of SmackDown was just Super Showdown business. So we'll come back from that. Even the big, quote unquote, big shocking return was tied to Super Showdown business. So I think the only thing that wasn't Super Showdown was Daniel Bryan, who said that he doesn't like going to these things. He had a match against Curtis Axel, and there's this interesting Drew Gulak bit where he's trying to become kind of like a like a guru, I guess, for wrestlers.
Okay.
Trying to like critique them and be like an analyst in that case. Like this is what you're doing, this is what you could do if you do this. You get better results, etc., that kind of thing. And it's an interesting angle. It actually made Curtis Axel look decent in the match he had against Daniel Bryan. Obviously, Daniel Bryan was going to win, but it seems like Drew Gulak is trying to win over the hearts and minds of fellow wrestlers and maybe even start a stable. So, I mean, that was kind of where, like, that's kind of the big thing there. Also, the Intercontinental title match for Braun Strowman is going to be a handicap match against Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh, okay, great.
So that happened. One of the other people, so that's Sami Zayn, who also does not like to go to these shows, and Kevin Owens, who, in solidarity with Sami Zayn, does not like to go to these shows.
Yeah, well, I mean, I especially don't blame Sami Zayn for not wanting to go to those shows, or any of the women as well.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, okay, we'll talk about that when we
get there.
We'll
talk about that when we get there, because that's it. We'll get there. But Kevin Owens had his bit. He had a match against Randy Orton, so there's kind of some feud growing there. But he lost it because the referee was in cahoots with the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins. So he's converting more people to his cause, including referees now.
I don't know if you could really be in cahoots with a Messiah, unless you don't believe in the legitimacy of their claim.
As a disciple, we'll say.
Well, that reminds me of the Acolytes.
Yeah, but it's a different cult of personality.
Well, that reminds me of... Okay, stop.
I probably could have kept going, too.
You could have. That's why I said stop. I was like, you're leading me down this road.
And
okay.
And the WWE kind of doubled down on the fact that Shayna Baszler will be winning the Women's Elimination Chamber match to face Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Because there was a Women's Elimination match contract signing where all 6 of the women were at the signing, and Becky Lynch came out and fought Shayna Baszler. So,
okay.
Also, Eric Rowan lost to Aleister Black, so we're gonna cook whatever chicken is in that cage and call it a day.
Good. That nobody that I knew really actually gave a shit about whatever was in that cage. Or I said this on the last show, but whatever it was could not have lived up to the hype they were building up around it. There was just no way.
It was mildly interesting, and I actually think whatever it was turned on Eric Rowan in this match. He ran into the pen and knocked it over during the match, and he was like, "Oh my god!" And in that moment, Aleister Black just kicked his face off, and that was it.
Oh, okay.
So that was it. Yep. So he looked a little better than he did last week, but still, the shine is coming off that angle a little bit. So that was that. NXT this week had just like some Charlotte business. She was there. Tucker confronted Mandy Rose about what happened.
Again?
Oh no, that was last week. Sorry.
I was gonna say, damn Tucker, you're really standing up for Otis. What's going on with my man Otis? I forgot all about him and everything that happened here.
They did have a segment, and Otis looked disheveled, which is
that's accomplished to make Otis look disheveled.
Yeah.
He's not exactly the most, buttoned down kind of guy to begin with.
But he looked very disheveled and downhearted in this particular one, and so Tucker was trying to say, all right, we're going to get you back on the horse, and we're going to get you back out there, and that sort of thing. So nothing really forward went with that, but we did at least get to see Otis this week. Also, The Miz and John Morrison will be defending the blue titles in the Elimination Chamber. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about Super Showdown. because that was another half canon thing that happened.
Can we just talk about this now? This elephant in the room?
Nope, because I got to tell you that Jack Gallagher came back and he's got tats now.
Oh, hey, cool. Good for him. Wasn't he one half of the Vaudevillains?
No. He was the cruiserweight with the umbrella.
Oh. You got tattoos?
Yeah.
That guy?
Yeah. Chest and arm tattoos on his pasty whiteness. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's a completely
his body to do with what he pleases, but
well, the WWE might not tell you that, but you're supposed to like clear all tattoos you get with them, which is a marketing thing. You know, they don't want to be making wrestling figures and have to like go back to the line and tell them. Or
as an aside, I do like that in video games, Braun Strowman's Superman tattoo has been removed.
Yes.
You know,
the Pepsi tattoo for CM Punk was a very similar idea.
Yeah. I guess they also don't want like Jack Gallagher to show up with like a monkey tattooed around his navel. So
no, it's a pirate ship around his nipples.
Okay, I'm having. I'm gonna go look this up.
Yeah, it's if you go to WWE.com, it's the splash for the event for Friday night's 205 Live.
205 Live. Okay. Well, let's just
while you do that, I'll go ahead and roll on forward. Dynamite also was just a go home show, so no big deal to talk about that. There was one thing that I missed from NXT, and that was Samoa Joe got knocked for a substance, the wellness policy, so he's out for 30 days. And
doesn't something always happen to Samoa Joe like before WrestleMania?
I've been reading bit, but
seems like that on Reddit.
But Mr. Smoke a Blunt, bro,
Matt
Riddle, actually referenced Samoa Joe partying a little too hard. So now he's got a wellness violation, and like everybody's like, ooh, and he was like, what? That's something that happens here. And then the music for the bad guys played. So I was like, oof, dude.
Matt Riddle continuing his gimmick of stepping on toes backstage.
Yep. So just calm your tits, bud. I think that was the biggest thing that happened on NXT. So, were you able to find this tattoo yet?
I looked at the tattoo. The sailor bit doesn't strike me as something odd for an English gentleman.
No, it looks fine. It's just
the skulls on his arms are kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, that's just I wanted to get a tattoo, so I'm gonna get a tattoo.
Yeah, like when you said he had tattoos, I thought he had like one or two, but no, he's got like a whole arm almost. Yeah,
he didn't get a sleeve, but he got.
Yeah.
He did find like he got upper arm, lower arm, and the entirety of his white pasty chest.
Yeah, he didn't come back even more covered in tattoos like Ruby Riott did, but nobody was surprised by that.
No, of course not. So,
okay,
so that happened. So let's start elephanting this. It was the first pay-per-view that happened this week.
Horseshit.
And it wasn't terrible. I know the results were questionable.
Okay.
But the show itself was fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna make this point right now before we get to that. The dichotomy between the audience that Super Showdown was trying to cater to and the audience that AEW Revolution was trying to cater to, there's a vast rift between the two of them.
It occurred to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Saudi fans or the people in Saudi Arabia want to see the Undertaker come out and win,
and not just the Saudi fans, but the general wider wrestling fan, like across the whole world. The people who have it in their country and can watch it every week are starting to lean a little more towards what AEW is giving off. But those who don't watch it every week, that's what Super Showdown was for. So keeping that in mind, I thought it was a decent show. But keeping in mind that I'm someone who watches every week and you're someone who keeps up with it every week, yeah, there were a lot of things that we could pick apart from this particular
There was a
show.
phrase that you used during the planning of the show, right? You said that Super Showdown did what?
You're gonna have to give it to me again because I talk a lot and sometimes I don't remember what I say.
You said it basically wiped out everything Raw and SmackDown was doing.
Oh, yeah. So that's why we didn't talk about SmackDown. Because everything the SmackDown especially reset. It almost was like Super Showdown was a SmackDown pay-per-view.
See, and this is what was annoying me about it, aside from what I'm really gonna bitch about later. But it can't be half canon if it like wipes out what's happening on the shows, and then you have to come back from Saudi Arabia and rearrange the chessboard again. That's annoying, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. They made some major moves. This is the second time that they've had the Universal Championship move on the show, and it seems like they're not afraid to do stuff like that now. So, yeah.
All right, so let's go over the weirdness.
Yeah.
Just
so
so
here's
that
the weirdness.
People who have no idea what we're talking about will understand why we're so upset.
Raw like stars. There were, they had the tag team match, and that was, the Seth and Murphy, who's, by the way, not Buddy Murphy anymore. Murph. They won. The OC beat the Viking Raiders for some reason.
Okay.
And then other stuff happened. That, like, Raw kind of got out of this. Here's what happened with SmackDown. It was really the actual official end to the Roman Reigns and King Corbin feud, with Roman winning in the steel cage match.
Okay.
The SmackDown Women's Championship was defended, and a night later, we actually had it was going to be a rematch of Bayley versus Naomi, but actually Sasha Banks came back. So I'm glad that there wasn't just a rematch for the sake of having a rematch for a historic women's match that half of the WWE universe didn't even see.
Yep. Nope. Good for the ladies.
Yep. That's we're gonna get that out of the way right now, right?
Yes.
That
good
out of all of our qualms
and
quibbles and issues with this show, they good for the ladies. They did right by them. It was a pretty good show. One day they'll let Naomi do her full dance routine whilst in Saudi Arabia, but yeah. That's that. And then we had 2 SmackDown title changes. And that's also the aggro crag was given out to The Undertaker.
Yeah, I saw that. The Undertaker showed up and won something.
He won the Two-Wake Mountain Trophy Gauntlet match. Which yeah, there was a gauntlet. So R-Truth did very well. He surprised a bunch of people, beat a bunch of people, and then eventually he lost. And AJ Styles was the last man standing, and he was like, yeah, everybody else is going to forfeit. I'm going to win. This is great. And then Taker came down, and 10 minutes later he was in the ring, and AJ started poking him in the chest, and Taker didn't even take his gear off. He just chokeslam, tombstone, wins the aggro crag.
Okay.
GG.
It doesn't really bother me, I guess, because the Saudi fans want to see Undertaker win something,
and it was it's a totally meaningless thing.
Yeah,
it's a cool. It's cool. It's got a trophy, whatever. But yeah,
and more importantly, it's not the Undertaker in an entire goddamn match.
Yep.
So.
And it's not the Undertaker, in a position that, where he could win the Universal Championship.
Yep.
Which, it turns out, that was the position Goldberg was in.
Tooey. There. It's my opinion on that.
Yeah, that's actually not how the Saudis reacted. They were mostly all about it.
I bet they were happy. I mean, you see Goldberg win a championship. That's fine, right? He's a legend.
It
for
wasn't.
them.
Yeah, it wasn't unanimous. There's still a lot of Fiend fans, but it wasn't what happened on Friday night.
Well,
Goldberg opened the show as the new champion, and he was roundly booed.
Well, I bet.
He
Boo,
was
Goldberg.
very booed. And then Roman Reigns came out, and he was cheered because he was not Goldberg.
Yeah, I went to Reddit, and there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth, and people were saying things like, "So the Fiend is officially dead, right?" And
Yep.
blah 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 blah.
Yeah, the Fiend will never come back from this. He's buried forever. They did such a good job building him, and now they've ruined it. And in the moment, I tweeted a few things that, like, listen, friends, this doesn't need to be the end of this. This can continue the build. You just wait until tomorrow, and let's see what happens. But most people are like, I'm not going to watch SmackDown tomorrow. I'm canceling my WWE subscription. Rah, 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 nash, 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 teeth,
See,
teeth.
I'm annoyed that it happened. But as I still kind of consider these shows to be half canon, I figure the WWE will fix that in a little bit. And
that little bit will be WrestleMania, because they are booked to have Goldberg versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania.
What?
So Goldberg will have another a month and a half reign with the title.
So Goldberg will have a month and a half reign with the title. He'll get to do his big entrance at WrestleMania, and then
he'll eat a spear from Roman Reigns, and it'll be mildly cathartic, and people will pop for that. And Roman Reigns might get over enough as a champion.
That's that would be an interesting way of making people like Roman Reigns, by getting the people to hate Goldberg so much for having taken the title from the Fiend. Now, I will say this. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't think the Fiend ever really needed the title.
Yep.
So I'm going to make it my headcanon that the Fiend was like, yeah, sure, have the title.
There's a tweet.
And
if you want to reinforce your headcanon, there is a tweet from the Fiend that lines up with what you're saying. Yeah.
And some people might say, "Oh, you're just explaining away bad writing."
That the title wasn't the goal. The goal was to shake things up.
As mad as I am about it, I'm not at the point where I'm going to quit watching wrestling.
And because the Fiend is now going to face John Cena at WrestleMania.
Oh boy, John Cena.
Yeah, John Cena. It was very nice. He came out and he said, "Listen, this WrestleMania is going to be a WrestleMania without John Cena." Because there are new people. He basically, he didn't say it in word for word, but he was like, there are new people that need to get over, and I don't want to be clogging up a spot for them. And of course, all the fans were booing because, nostalgia John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
But, then the Fiend came out, and all was well in the world. So he said, all right, fine, I'll face you, Bray Wyatt.
The only thing that worries me about it is John Cena's maybe one of a handful of people that I could see being allowed to defeat the Fiend.
Nope. So those days are over. I actually would have my immediate ideas for booking when Goldberg won was Goldberg versus John Cena for the title at WrestleMania.
Okay.
And that's a match that I never knew I wanted, but I kind of, listening to it, was like, ooh, that's very interesting. It's a match that no one has ever seen, a match that could be interesting, and John Cena wins his record title. Great. The Fiend then stalks Goldberg, defeats him at the next pay-per-view, and then takes the title from John Cena, putting over the Fiend. Huge. Perfect booking. That's not going to happen. So I just have to hope that they give Goldberg just a little bit of a heel edge over the next month or so. Maybe have him talk about how everybody else was changed by going into the ring with the Fiend Bray Wyatt, but he didn't, and all those other idiots weren't as strong, didn't have as powerful in offense as I do with spear and jackhammer, and just have him not realize that maybe he did change from that and became more of an asshole.
I was going to say, is the WWE actually having people change after wrestling the Fiend? It's not just a fan theory anymore.
They have mentioned it on commentary.
Okay. Well, that'd be interesting, because then if you have the Fiend face John Cena, maybe he comes back the next night as the Doctor of Thugonomics. Mm-hmm. And everybody is happy.
Yep. And he has a long run as the Doctor of the Thugs.
Yeah.
So there was also the other title change where The Miz and John Morrison beat The New Day for the
I mean
championships.
that doesn't really bother me, you know.
No, it doesn't, and they did it in a Healy fashion. It made sense. It's kind of good to shake things up. They might
Also,
not survive the rest of the month with the titles because they have to defend them in Elimination Chamber.
I saw them getting beaten up by the Usos.
Yep.
On
They
SmackDown.
had a match on SmackDown. Yep. And
Did they lose that?
Yeah, they did.
Well, then why do they still have the titles?
Because it's not a championship match.
Pet peeve activated.
Yep.
Anytime the champion wrestles, the championship should be on the line in most cases.
Nope.
Yes.
So I agree with you, but the reality of the WWE is that any champion, especially tag team champions, can lose as much as possible to put over the other people in the division as long as they win in the championship match.
See, and that irritates me because...
It irritates a lot of people. Most people call that booking into question, and it would be okay if it happened sparingly, or even in this case, where the heels did some chicanery to win in the first place. You know, you build a little story where, look, okay, maybe they don't deserve it, because they just lost to somebody else in a non-title match. But they do it to all of the champions, all the tag team champions, and they do it over and over again, and it's really starting to frustrate a lot of people. Yeah.
If I have to hear somebody pin the champion one more time without having actually won the championship, I'm going to quit wrestling forever.
Yeah, they can, they could do something like AEW, where there's actually wrestler rankings, and if you beat someone else who's ranked above you, you move up.
That sounds like a good idea in theory. I don't think it's sustainable long term.
Well, we'll find out, because they're in on it now. As we saw, because we watched the pay-per-view for the first time, we saw that all the records were up there. They made note to mention that Cody was the second ranked wrestler on the AEW roster, and that MJF now has a victory over him. So, regardless of how the victory happened, it's still going to go down in the record books as a victory. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works. SmackDown tried it, and they couldn't keep to it for more than a week and a half. I think Randy Orton got mad at it, and that was the end of it.
You mean like Randy Orton the wrestler, or Randy Orton the person?
Randy Orton wrestler, definitely. Jury's still out on Randy Orton the person.
Okay.
There was an angle where Randy was like, "Why the hell am I not ranked higher?" And he started beating up other people. But there's a fair amount of times when wrestling angles imitate life. So, yeah, there's that. I think that's all that really should be mentioned about this show. I'm just double checking to see if there's anything worth... no, we don't even need to mention the fact that Brock Lesnar took out Ricochet in a couple minutes. Oh, I did want to mention one thing. So... the half of the canon that I really like, though, is the one true storyline that has been held together through all of these events. And that's the Mansoor storyline.
Mansoor?
Yes. He is, during the very first Saudi show, he was announced with, I think it was 3 or 4 other people who were the first, people from Saudi Arabia, the Middle Eastern area, to enter the Performance Center. So he was out in the middle, and then there was that whole, Tavares Iran thing that didn't go over very well. But Mansoor was one of the people who ran off the foreign heels, etc., etc. And then he won a Battle Royal after training for a bit in his home country. Last pay-per-view, he beat Cesaro in a pretty decent match. And this pay-per-view, he beat Dolph Ziggler in a pretty decent match. So there's been a build to him and his character. He's wrestled a couple of times on NXT. He was actually on an NXT pre-show doing, commentary recently. So he's being pushed, and it's interesting. It's interesting to see him because all the rest of this happens in a vacuum. As we've established, it's half canon.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the half is a little heavier in terms of a title change, but the next Super Showdown, they're not going to mention that the guy who just won the Universal Championship had a worse looking jackhammer against The Undertaker. That's all in the past, and it doesn't really matter this time around. But this whole Mansoor thing, you can see the line going through these pay-per-views, and I wouldn't be surprised if, like the NXT UK title, we end up with like an NXT, Saudi Arabian title or an NXT Middle East title or something like that, with Mansoor winning it.
That's yeah, cool.
So there we go. I just wanted to put that out there. That's not something that you've been paying attention to at all because it's not the half of the canon that you even care about.
Nope.
So,
But I mean, I don't. I'm not gonna hate on
no.
a Saudi dude doing well in his own country.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, it's just I just wanted to throw that out there. So it's something that easily could be missed if you're just reading the hot takes. So I just wanted to get that out there. So speaking of hot takes, it's now our time to talk about the damn AEW show. Holy crap. So this is the first one we sat through, and we had all sorts of fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's hard to say anything else about that show. Matt mentioned it before in his marking out that yeah, it's not as slick as the WWE. By far, they are the best at putting together packages, promo packages, opening packages, all that. The only ones who come relatively close is NWA with their 10 Pounds of Gold series.
Mm-hmm.
And their studio sit down and their ring sit down interviews, but those are because they go to a whole different aesthetic and they do that aesthetic well. What AEW is trying to do is a similar thing that what WWE was trying to do, and they don't do it as well. What they do as well is put good wrestling product in the ring.
Oh yeah, no, the matches were fantastic.
The matches were fantastic, and not only that, they were highly varied. And they brought different stories all through the whole thing, and they tended to be highly story driven. Even in the match that featured the most spotty, not spotty as in talent or anything, but like just hitting spots over, just everything is just spot after spot after spot. The tag team title matches. Even in that match, it had a deep and interesting story. So, yeah, I felt good about that. The women's match wasn't great.
The AEW, from what I've heard, needs to like beef up its women's division. But we're comparing them to, I guess, the WWE, which has the best women's division in the world.
In NXT, absolutely. And even the main roster women, it's a small sample size right now, but I'd even take the talent on either Raw or SmackDown over the talent on AEW right now. Doesn't mean they won't get better, doesn't mean that it is. It's just it hasn't come together in a way that's very interesting. And the match wasn't anything to write home about. It was okay. It was sloppy. And it might not have even been okay. It might have been a little worse than okay. There was a lot of people who said that was a tough match to get through, and I didn't necessarily disagree with them.
I mean, I really can't argue with that because I'll be honest, I tuned that match out. I didn't really watch much of it.
I mean, it didn't help that it was right after the almost 60-minute long Kenny Omega, Adam Page, Young Bucks tag team match that had, I think the final count was 11 V-triggers.
What was the drinking game that you were quote unquote playing?
It was a bit of a joke, but the drinking game was anytime someone hits a V-trigger or a one-winged angel, you drink. And the theory is that when someone hits the one-winged angel, you're supposed to finish your drink, because that has, as they said on the show, has never been kicked out of. Though, in this case, you would probably have to do it twice, because Adam Hangman Page hit one. Maybe that doesn't count. But if you're Adam Hangman Page, I guess he'd take any sort of drinking game. So I'm up on that. It was just something that I myself came up with, because Kenny Omega has the tendency to hit, like, double-digit V-triggers in his matches. And V-trigger is supposed to be one of his signature moves. You know, and in the school of WWE, you hit your signature move once, twice, if it's a big, huge match, maybe 3 times. But as I was telling you during the pay-per-view, Kenny Omega needs to hit the V-trigger at least 6 times to get paid. And that was a joke. But it also, like most of the best jokes, seems to be rooted in truth.
Of course.
So,
and it was nice for me to finally see Kenny Omega wrestle. I've known about the man, but I've never actually seen a match with him. And you were
not let down.
Nope.
He was very impressive. When people say that he might be the best wrestler in the business today, it's hard to argue against it, especially seeing as this wasn't even a singles match. This was, him with a quarter of this tag match, so very hard to argue with that. All things being equal, though, that was not the match with the biggest star of the night.
Nope. The match with the biggest star of the night was Orange Cassidy versus Pac.
That very much so was. There was no bigger pops than in that match, and we were giddy. Like, we were loving that, and that everybody fun. Was. The character is great, and it just, like, putting him up against Pac, who's just like a bastard, is a great way to kind of play off the ideas that, the wrestling community in a whole has about Orange Cassidy. Like, this is, like, look at this, the laziest wrestler ever, the king of sloth style, Orange Cassidy. Like, what am I even doing sharing a ring with him? But
well, I mean, then Orange Cassidy, like, tried a little bit.
Yeah, and the 0 to 60 is awesome. And then the fact that he also has a moveset where he can try and still look like he's being totally casual about it is very impressive. Like,
you mean like those kip-ups with his hands in his pockets?
Yes, the kip-up and the arm drag takedown with the hands in his pockets and the sunglasses still on. You know? He looked like genuinely dejected when Pac pushed him so hard that his sunglasses flew off.
Yeah, and that's they say Orange Cassidy is freshly squeezed, but to be honest, it's a very fresh and unique character.
It is.
One that we haven't seen, I would say, before.
The only a lot of people have different wrestling styles, but it's very seldom the case where, like, the wrestling style is the character. Like cruiserweights tend to fly around a lot more, but they're not like, hey, I weigh 205 pounds, look at me go in the air. This is like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was very fun. I think the last time that I've seen anything that comes close to this was when The Miz was at the peak of his heeldom a couple years back, because his style was, and it was part of the character, was like, he's not flashy. He is a heel. He'll do heel things. He'll wrestle you, like, cautious and heely. And that's the last time that I've really seen someone's gimmick live through their style of wrestling. But Orange Cassidy just takes it to a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah. And I've heard in commentary on the internet that Orange Cassidy can go. Yeah. So it was nice to actually finally see an example of that.
Mm-hmm. And we saw it. He took a lot of beating too in that match. Mm-hmm. And we knew he wasn't going to win.
Oh yeah, no.
But they still gave him a little bit of a distraction spot so that he didn't he tapped super quick to the Rings of Saturn, but I guess they're trying to protect that move a little bit for Pac. And, you know, if you catch him as bewildered as he was, he may not have had enough time to put up any sort of defenses and taps that quickly. But yeah, I think that turned out all right.
And to be honest, Orange Cassidy doesn't strike me as a wrestler who would sit there and try and really struggle against too much a submission that he's been caught in the middle of the ring.
You got me, okay.
Yeah, Orange Cassidy may be like, oh fuck yeah, okay, you win.
I think in maybe a lower stakes match, I'd be with you on that one. But I think on a pay-per-view, on your pay-per-view debut, I wouldn't fight the fact that if he fought it out.
Okay.
But that wasn't the only big deal during this match. There was only one title change, but it was the big one. It was Jon Moxley defeating Le Champion, Chris Jericho, in the final match. And hey, fuck it, it was great.
Oh yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It's really hard for me to say anything beyond that because it was just simply good meat and potatoes, old-fashioned kind of wrestling main event where the title changes.
Yep,
you know,
a big knockdown, drag out brawl that had us questioning referee Aubrey Edwards a little bit because it wasn't a no disqualification match. But there was about 73 times where they could have been disqualified. Still, it turned out to be a good show, so, you know, we let it slide. And
I think at some point Jericho even shoved her.
Yeah, trying to get disqualified. And, you know, the fact that they kind of established, and they have, like I told you during the match itself, they have established Aubrey Edwards as someone who's not going to take crap from anyone, and isn't going to, you know, and knows the difference between somebody trying to get themselves disqualified to save the match. And
she's not going to let them game her.
Yes.
So
yeah, they're not going to let them pull one over on her. So that allowed this to kind of go on, and eventually Moxley pulled one over on Chris Jericho, who, while the ref was turned away, gouged Moxley's good eye. But it turns out both were good. So he was able to hit the Paradigm Shift, FKA Dirty Deeds, in with a couple of your good pops for the night, with those Paradigm Shifts at the end. And then he took to the microphone, and there was zero filter.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. I don't think I've heard a wrestler swear that much ever in a wrestling show.
No. First of all, the F-bomb basically never gets dropped.
Oh God, no.
He will probably have to pay a little bit back on that one. But man, I don't know. Maybe Tony Khan came out today and said, you know what, Mox is gonna Mox. We'll let it, you know, as long as it's not on our TV show. Pay-per-view is what it is. It's not rated.
Yep. And that was that promo at the end was, you know, real stuff from the heart, not scripted. So that was nice.
It was heartfelt, and it's the kind of thing that, you know, Jon Moxley wants to do. He wants to be able to just kind of shoot. And we'll see if that's the kind of champion that he is going forward. Because we had the money champion, Chris Jericho, who, at the time when he took the title, absolutely made sense. Because he's a great performer. We saw it again, not just in his ability to go and work in the ring, but, you know, in his character and the continuous evolution of it, that he was well deserving of a run. But now we're kind of moving in a different direction, whereas you had this, you know, constantly evolving character to keep ahead of the game and look good in the eyes of everybody, to Jon Moxley, who doesn't give a shit about what everybody thinks, except, you know, he wants the fans to know that the fans were the ones who won the title. Other than that, he doesn't really, you know, he's a face, so he can't not care about the fans, but he doesn't really care about much else. And, you know, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see whether he gets beat down this Wednesday by all the Inner Circle people, whether anyone comes to his aid, or whether we get a storyline of him trying to overcome these odds. while the target is on his back. Because it's one thing to take on a stable when you're the guy gunning for the guy, but it's another thing to take on a stable and then everybody else because you got the target on your back.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's most of our takeaway from AEW's Revolution. We very much like the show.
Yep.
$50
Although I will say this,
is still a little steep, but
yep.
I think we got enough enjoyment out of it that if one of us were to pay $50 for it, it probably was fine.
Yeah, I'll pay you that half that I owe you. Don't worry, Jesse. I'll get it to you.
Yeah. No rush. No.
Now I'm on the record. Thanks. It was a great show that Matt owes me $25 for. All right. So I don't think anything else happened in the world of wrestling, right?
Not anything big, not that I can think of. If it comes up to me, I'll mention it in our hot take, or as we head out.
Which is what we're going to do right now.
Yeah, we're in a hot take right now. So the hot take is a segment where we talk about, something that's interesting that happened in the world of wrestling. Sometimes it's something that happened right in the actual pay-per-views that we watch. Sometimes it's something that happened down the street as we were looking at a cloud that was shaped like Yokozuna. Sometimes it's something that we find right on the internet right before the show starts. But in all those times, what we do to kick it off is someone jumps in and says,
hot take. So I'm going to begin. Typically after a pay-per-view, I have my DDT report. I haven't really been doing those as often lately, but I thought I'd do one for AEW Revolution. The DDT is my favorite wrestling move. I was a big Jake the Snake Roberts fan from back in the day. It was the original RKO out of nowhere. And I wasn't able to count, but the match of the night, as far as DDTs go, goes to Orange Cassidy and Pac. There had to have been, 4, 5, or 6 DDTs in that match. A lot of them tilty whirligig ones. Some of them just regular old-fashioned DDTs. It was wonderful.
And hot take. The crowd popped for every one of them. So I, on the other hand, am going to talk a little bit about something else. We might dive into, in more depth, the whole elite thing, the potential breakup between Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page, and the Young Bucks. Right now, I think Matt is not quite as well versed on the whole situation, and generally, I'm not as well. But it's probably the biggest storyline right now in AEW, so it's probably something we'll talk about in the future. What I'm going to talk to you right now, however, is about one of the greatest things to come out of the WWE in the past few years, and that's Southpaw Regional Wrestling. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Southpaw Regional Wrestling will be back for a 3rd season. So if you love the hokey, regional territory idea in spoof form, with wrestlers playing characters that are often, just the ones that they would have played when they were hanging out with their friends in middle school, or are completely different than the characters that they play in real life and are hilarious because of it, I highly suggest you catch up on the first 2 seasons of that show. And it's glowing reviews from our Mark, Matt Cooper.
Yes. What am I saying?
Yes, no, that you like that show.
I do. Southpaw Regional Wrestling is my favorite. In fact, if I had to buy wrestling T-shirts, which I hate to say this, but I think most wrestling T-shirts are sort of gaudy, and I don't like them.
That's why I only buy them when they're on clearance, and you get 3 for $10.
Yeah, maybe the only wrestling shirt I like, the pure wrestling shirt, is Rusev Day. But I would probably buy a Southpaw Regional Wrestling shirt or Orange Cassidy shirt. All right. So now it's time for the finishing move. This is a move that I come up with on the fly during the show based upon the things we talked about. Jesse, you're going to love this one. Mm-hmm. Are you ready? So this one is called Hold Your Ire. It's just $1 million dream.
Yes,
but
so,
it's called Hold Your Ire.
Yeah, so apparently, you get your opponent all revved up, and he's coming at you all angry, and you just snatch him with the sleeper hold, and he just like almost immediately falls asleep. Poof.
That's how that one always goes.
Yep, like a
Opponent
coquina
has to
clutch,
be riled up,
which we won't be seeing for 30 days.
You're right.
So on that note, you will be seeing us in the next 30 days. I don't know, there might be a hiatus as we head down the road to WrestleMania. We'll have to see. But for now, you can still catch us on markandsmark.podbean.com, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, Facebook.com/markandsmark, on social at markandsmark, and on Twitter and Instagram, and also on the Daily Smark website. So, for Matt Cooper, I am Jesse Disbro. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.